Steven next defines what a habit is and discusses how we can break away from old habits and become empowered to learn new habits of effectiveness.
Now let's take a minute to define what a habit is, because we're talking here about 7 basic habits. A habit is an internalized principle, particularly if it's a habit of effectiveness. You've got a natural law we sometimes call a principle that makes sense. For instance, in business, a principle would be to value the customer and to adapt your whole approach in business to the customer. That's a principle. If I've internalized that principle to where I know how to do that, and I want to do it, and I know what to do, that's a habit. So the habit is the overlapping of knowledge, skill, and attitude. Knowledge is what to do. Skill is how to do. Attitude is why to do. Or you could say want to do. See, I may know how to treat the customer with value to build that relationship. I may know what I should do, but not want to, because I may not feel like I'm treated that way. So it won't be a habit. In another case, I may know what to do to build my relationship with this teenager who's going through this terrific identity crisis and feels alienated from his parents, from the family. I may want to do it, know what to do, but not know how to do it. I don't have the skill. So if I lack the skill, it's not a habit. I might even have certain skill and knowledge, but not want to. A habit is the overlapping of what to do or knowledge, how to do or skill, and why to do, want to do, or attitude. Where they overlap, you'll see a habit. Horace Mann, the great educator, once said, "Habits are like a cable. We weave a strand of it every day, and soon it cannot be broken." I don't personally buy the last expression. I know that they can be broken, because habits can be learned and unlearned, and new habits can be learned. We'll go into that when we discuss habit number 1. However, the first part of Horace Mann's statement is so true. People gradually develop a way of thinking, a paradigm, if you will, and also a kind of lifestyle that they are reinforced by in various ways. They have certain kinds of satisfactions, even psychological satisfactions, even though they realize the habit is not a fruitful habit. Nevertheless, it's deep inside them, and it has its play upon their life. So to overcome a habit involves a process and a tremendous commitment. It's almost like the Apollo moon trips put on by NASA many years ago. They had to literally break out of the tremendous gravity pull of the Earth and also the atmosphere surrounding the Earth. And most of the energy that was spent on those fantastic scientific adventures was spent in the first few seconds, even though those moon rockets went over 500,000 miles to the moon and back. But once they were out of the pull of gravity of the Earth, like habits are, gravity pull us, and out of the atmosphere, the environment that our heads have helped create, they had an amazing level of freedom. In fact, one of the astronauts was interviewed and was asked the question, what was it like for the lunar module and the command module to separate, and for the lunar module to go down to the moon? And he answered through breathing. And the reporter pressed him, what do you mean? He said, it is like the breath of a baby, the amount of freedom that he had, because he was not held down by gravity or by atmosphere. But the breaking of the habit, the breaking out of the earth and pulling away from that gravity and that atmosphere requires a level of commitment, a sitting down, a counting of the cost, to pay the price. But once it's done, you and I can experience the exhilarating kind of freedom that little NASA metaphor bespeaks. I'll tell you, however, one of the problems with my reasoning here. Most people tend to be into quick fix. In fact, many of the very popular products give quick promises of relief. But the problem is that they work only on acute things. What's an acute illness physically? It is where there's some pain. The chronic illness, like the great mass of the iceberg, is the persistent, continuing disease which lies under the acute pain. Most people are into solving acute illnesses. They want the pain to be relieved. They want the relationship to be instantly corrected, solved. Seriously, they're into nostrums, quick fixes. They want to deal with acute illnesses. The problem is, the more you look for quick fixes, And the more you attempt to apply some gimmick, some technique that seemed to work for someone else or that seems to have such an instant appeal to you, the worse the chronic problem becomes. For instance, if I am chronically fatigued, where my reserve capacities have gone because my working style has put me into a situation of management by crisis all the time, and I'm always overexerting or pressing myself to do far more than I should do, or where my emotional life is a function of other people's opinions of me to the point that I'm always trying to become all things to all people, or where I'm just literally stressed out of my gourd one way or another and the reserve capacities tend to break down, I could develop a chronic case, maybe of mononucleosis or other kinds of diseases. And that would manifest itself in certain symptoms. And I might look for quick solutions, quick answers. But it is illusionary. It's deceptive. Do not believe in quick fix. The only way you can bring the harvest in the fall is to plant in the spring, and to water, and to weed, and to cultivate, and fertilize during the summer. However, when it comes to social systems, people have learned quick fixes. How many of us crammed in school? How many of us got by cramming, got grades, got degrees even? And yet inwardly we know we didn't get a good solid education because we did not really pay the price day in and day out in our thinking processes, our daily preparations. We know it. And if we're hurt in some way, we work on that immediate hurt, try to solve the situation. Then another problem breaks out somewhere else, we run to that. You see, that's the kind of lifestyle that breaks people down and fatigues them, burns them out. Then their whole emotional capacity to relate well with others, particularly under stress and pressure, is reduced almost to a minimum. And their life becomes almost an entire function of what's happening to them. They become victimized by it all. A while back, I visited with a friend of mine who is the head of surgery at a hospital. And I asked him if he'd allow me to visit some of the operations going on in the hospital. He did. We went to over 20 of them. I also visited an operation that he performed. In fact, assisted him. They gowned me and washed me, and I literally held the instrument that kept the chest wall open while he did this vascular operation, replacing 3 vessels. He had me actually feel those vessels. I could sense how stiff they were, how brittle they were, because they were filled with all of this plaque, this cholesterol substance that was occluding those arteries. And I said, why don't you just clean them out? He said, for a while you can reverse the process, but after a while, Stephen, the plaque, the cholesterol becomes the very content of the wall. And I said, well, if you have corrected these 3 places, is the man clear? He said, it's through his whole system. Feel this, feel this, feel this. He's got a chronic problem, a vascular problem. It's a heart disease problem. He's an exerciser. You can see some of the supplementary circulatory system that's been developed, but he doesn't want to change other aspects of his lifestyle. He's got a chronic problem. I'm only working on the 3 most acute things that might cause heart attacks or stroking because of the lack of oxygen flow to those parts of the body. In other words, my friends, these basic habits are basic. They're not 7 optional habits. They are generic. They are foundational. They're fundamental. You'll find all truly effective people possess these habits. They work on the chronic problems and also upon opportunities. New, exciting opportunities that can release the human energy, the human spirit, the creativity within us.